my name is Tessa, and I am a researcher here at ATD. Um, Today, we are going to be presenting on ATD's latest research that explores how instructional designers use AI, what type of AI they use, and how AI has impacted their abilities to design courses. So first off, I want to thank Clarity Consultants for sponsoring today's webinar. Clarity Consultants creates custom award-winning learning programs for its clients, which include 70% of the Fortune 200. Their consultants are experts in designing, developing, and delivering learning programs that drive results. I'd also like to thank Josh Cavalier for joining us today. Throughout today's webinar, I'll be having a conversation with Josh where he will provide some context and some color to our research findings. Josh is the founder and CEO of joshcavalier.ai, helping L&D professionals harness AI to transform human-machine performance. With 30 plus years in education technology, Josh makes AI practical through training, speaking, and his live show, Brain Power. His book, Applying AI in Learning and Development, From Platforms to Performance, provides a roadmap for integrating AI into L&D using real-world platforms, tools, workflows, and ethical consideration. So thanks again to Josh for joining us today. Josh, if you want to come on camera quickly to say hi to everyone.
Hello, great to be here and can't wait to get on with the conversation.
Great. Yeah, thanks for joining us, Josh. So, yeah, like I mentioned, we'll be having a conversation throughout the webinar. And then at the end of the webinar, once we've gone through the research findings, we will have a Q&A with Josh. So here is the report. And the report is free to download for both members and non-members. So Rocky, my colleague, is going to put the link for you all in the chat so you can go ahead and download it. Okay, so before we jump in to our findings, I want to give you all a little bit of background on the demographics of our survey participants. So the report is based on answers from 232 instructional designers. And the industry most represented is healthcare and social assistance, with 16% of respondents falling into this category. And then the second most represented is educational services at 15%. And then we see industries like finance and insurance, as well as professional services being represented by more than 10% of the sample. And if you want, even more granular breakdown of the industries, you can find that in the back of the report. And I'll also go over company size. So we see that medium and large organizations were well represented in the sample, and then we've got 14% coming from small organizations. So of the 232 instructional designers who answered the survey, 80% of them currently use AI tools in their work, and then 20% do not. So the findings that we go over today, most of them are based on, well, all of them are based on those instructional designers who currently use AI. And then in our survey, we did ask some questions to those participants who don't use AI right now. And they most commonly reported that they choose not to due to lack of trust in AI generated content. And then they also cited things like privacy concerns and lacking the right skills to use AI. So before we jump in, I want to get a sense of our audience today and who is currently using AI tools, um, because I think that'll be helpful for us to know who's out there, and also for Josh, who's going to be answering some questions throughout the webinar. I think it's helpful to know what you guys are using. So I'll just give you a quick second to answer the poll. Okay, so we see that 84% of everyone on this webinar is using AI and 60% are not. So, that's pretty similar to what we found in our report. Um, cool. So we are going to move on to the first section of our report on AI adoption amongst instructional designers. So before we jump into the data, I want to make sure we get our definitions straight. So what I want to focus on is generative AI versus traditional AI. Generative AI is what my guess is most professionals in the workforce today who are using AI, but that's what they're using. Generative AI include tools like ChatGPT and Copilot that generate content. And this technology can also be incorporated into existing platforms or software. So, for instance, your authoring tool may integrate generative AI. Then we've got traditional AI, which performs tasks using certain predetermined rules. So the system analyzes data to recognize patterns and then produces predictions or outputs. So, as an example, traditional AI in a learning experience platform can be used to do things like analyze learners' goals, history, and preferences to then recommend learning content. So, that's that rules-based traditional AI. So, when we asked our survey participants what type of AI they're using, we found that pretty much everyone, 96%, are using generative AI, and then 17% use traditional AI. So, given that an instructional designer's role is focused on creating learning content and materials, I'm not surprised that generative AI is the more popular tool. So, although AI technology has existed for a long time, we've seen a really rapid advancement in the underlying models of generative AI, specifically in the past 5 years. So, we wanted to get a sense of when instructional designers first started using AI tools. So, we found that about two-thirds started using AI tools within the last year. So that's quite recently. And then only 28% were using it 1 to 2 years ago. And then we see 7% more than 2 years ago. So I'm going to turn it over to Josh. We've got a big picture question here, sort of laying the groundwork for the rest of our presentation. How will AI transform instructional design? And why is it that the job function of instructional design specifically can benefit from AI?
Sure. Well, I know that for those of you that have been using AI, you know the answer to that question. It will impact every facet of the learning journey. And I think that's one of the more difficult things about learning professionals approaching this technology is that you can go all the way from performance consulting to performance support and everywhere in between. And AI can impact every part of that process. And I believe for learning professionals, exploration, working within the constraints of the way that AI shows up in work for you. Everyone is trying to navigate that right now. So yeah, it is vast, Tessa, as far as the possibilities of leveraging AI throughout the whole entire learning experience.
Yeah, and I'm also guessing, given sort of like I said, recent advancements, and we don't even know like how advanced and when how things will change, given
Right.
things change so fast. I'm wondering if it's like kind of difficult to even predict, I don't know, 10 years
Sure.
down the line how our field is going to change with this.
Well, as you can see with the release of ChatGPT 5, most people, including the AI labs, thought this was going to be the beginning of artificial general intelligence. Well, it wasn't. So there is a lot that needs to happen in regards to the technology. And in the meantime, and I'm sure many of the attendees would agree with this, that organizations are beginning to have AI operations show up safely within their organizations. Typically, it's through Copilot or models that are through an internal web page. So this time last year, hardly anybody had access to AI within their organization, and most people were using on the down low. So now it shows up secure. It shows up in various ways as far as custom models, or depending upon the function or line of business that you support. So we're definitely seeing it mature as far as access, but for the most part, learning professionals are accessing AI through their existing platforms and tools.
Okay, great. Um, yeah, I remember I was speaking with another SME. I don't know if it was even for this report, but they were saying that, you know, even if organizations that weren't allowing their employees to use AI, like you said, people were using it on the down low. So you have to sort of develop your policies and start giving access to these tools because people are going to use it regardless, is what she was saying. Um, so yeah, that's really interesting. Um, so moving on, um, we are going to dive into the benefits and challenges of using instructional design. Sorry, using AI for instructional design. So, in the workplace, we all use a lot of different tools to get our jobs done. And I think we can probably all agree that we want those tools to actually be useful. I know the last thing that I want is to be asked to use a tool that makes doing my job harder. And I'm sure we've all been there, done that. So, when creating this study, and with AI tools being quite new to the workplace, we thought it'd be important to find out, is AI actually helping instructional designers? So, when we asked our survey participants to what extent AI tools have improved their abilities to design courses, most of them said that these tools have somewhat or very much improved their abilities. And then only 10% said slightly, and 1% said not at all. So I think from a practical standpoint, what's important here is like with all tools, you have to know how to use AI tools correctly to see the impact. So you need to know the proper use cases and then apply the right skills. For instance, maybe one of those skills is prompting to really augment your abilities. And the fact that a majority of respondents here have already seen improvement in their abilities is a sign that the tools are proving beneficial in the domain of instructional design, at least. So, I want to hear from you all in the chat. How have AI tools improved your ability to design courses? And then if they haven't been helpful, also please share that. Today I've got a few of these open-ended questions. I figured, these tools are new and we're all starting to use them. So this is a nice space to sort of talk about this stuff and have some community. Uh, Storyboarding, ideas, voiceovers, brainstorming. Okay, I'm seeing a lot in here of tasks and responsibilities that we're actually going to be touching on later in the webinar of how often people are using AI for these things. Let's see, large data set analysis, ideation. Okay. Yeah, so actually a lot of this we'll be touching on later on. So thanks everybody for sharing. Um,
Hey, Tessa, I just want to point out, one thing that's
yeah.
fascinating about looking at all of these tasks that are being accomplished with AI, many people are concerned about AI hallucinating, right? As
Mhm.
far as like not bringing back information from a source of truth. But look at how many people said brainstorming, right? And
Yeah.
creating ideas. That's when you want AI to actually come up with something novel. So there are times that you actually do want to lean into the AI hallucinating or to come up with ideas that may be outside your purview. So again, it depends upon the task that you're performing. But again, sometimes you do want to go ahead and lean into that.
Yeah, totally. That's actually one of the in the report we do like steps for success and an action plan as a takeaway from the research, and that's something that we suggest is definitely sort of analyzing what tasks are um, will benefit most from using the tools. You want to think about that diligently. So yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Josh. Um, okay, so uh, we asked, how have AI tools affected the time it takes instructional designers to design their courses? And we found that over half of instructional designers find that AI somewhat reduces the time it takes to design a course, and then 37% find that AI greatly reduces the time. So, as an example, we asked our survey participants to write open-ended answers to, how have these tools reduced your time? And one of our survey respondents shared, I use AI tools to make suggestions to subject matter experts for adjustments to content or to change the tone in their writing. Without AI, the process would be either a longer working session in which I would do it with the SME, or a lot of back and forth and rewrites in need of approvals. And so I really liked this example because I myself could actually empathize with this process and how sort of drawn out it can be. In a previous job that I worked, not as an instructional designer, but I was working with SMEs to write business proposals. And I would have to go back and forth with these technical SMEs, sort of just as this person had said, to rewrite different parts of these proposals, change the tone, add different details, etc. And so I can definitely see how working with an AI partner can reduce some of that friction and also reduce that back and forth. So again, I'm curious to hear what you guys have experienced. If you take a second, share in the chat with us. How have AI tools either decreased or increased the amount of time it takes you to develop courses? I'm seeing increase. Copilot does a decent job at video creation, but still have to edit afterwards. Yeah, decrease, decrease. Huge decrease. Increased review time. Okay. Yeah. Definitely that reviewing is going to be a part of um, using AI, reviewing that output. Um, but sort of, I think based on my own learning and education on this area, I think AI really proves beneficial for like repetitive. repetitive tasks. And then we'll see later on in our research what which tasks people are seeing a benefit from. Next, we asked our survey respondents about their concerns for common risks associated with using AI. And as you can see in the graph, almost everyone was at least somewhat concerned about each one of the risks listed, if not very concerned. So the first one here, copyright and intellectual property rights of content generated. This is sort of a big ethical and legal area being grappled with right now. Um, Different jurisdictions have different laws, and then organizations all have different policies around, can you use something that's generated straight from AI or not? So, it's a gray area, and it makes sense that a lot of folks are concerned about this issue. And then next, we've got accuracy of the information or content generated. And I was speaking with SME for our upcoming report on data analysis in TD. And we were chatting about AI for data analysis specifically, and how important it is that when using AI for this, the user, just like I mentioned not too long ago, needs to be able to have some foundational knowledge or skill in order to verify the output. So this applies to other types of content too. If the user can't check the accuracy of the output, that opens up a lot of risk. As someone who does data analysis for my job, just as an example, I can imagine how catastrophic it would be if I published data or presented to senior leadership using data that using an analysis that wasn't correct, that was just spit out of an AI. So yeah, definitely verifying the output to make sure that the content is accurate um, is a good practice. Third on the graph, we've got confidentiality of organizational data. So this sort of goes back to that issue of ownership, and then there's also security, especially with open source platforms. So again, it's important to know your organization's policy before putting any data into tools that might use your data to train their algorithms. Um, and then also in some situations, your data could become available to people outside your organization. And then last here, we've got the issue of algorithmic bias. And this happens when the algorithm's input data is biased. It skews the output. And what we have to be careful of is in certain circumstances, that output that is already skewed can then be used as input to train an algorithm. And so you can think of that as like a cycle. And if the algorithm is learning and perpetuating the same bias, the results become really skewed. So, a lot of times this is talked about in scenarios such as like healthcare and law enforcement, but this can also happen with the tools that you're using for your work as an instructional designer. So I wanted to turn it over to Josh to talk about how instructional designers can mitigate some of these risks while using AI.
Sure, let's go right down the line. I think with copyright, you definitely have to be careful for anything that's going external to your organization. There is still many lawsuits that are outstanding, and we don't exactly know how these lawsuits are going to shake out and the response then from the labs in regards to the training data that was used within these models. Bottom line is, check the citations. You're going to have to go in and take a look at exactly where this information is coming from if you're going to use it externally and even internally, just checking the validity of the information. So if you're using models like Perplexity or even ChatGPT and you're asking for citations, I have even found when there are citations and you check those citations, that within the citation itself, that information could be wrong. So please be careful, right? In regards to accuracy, make sure that you budget your time and do your due diligence in all content that's being created by a model. In regards to confidentiality, anyone that is on Copilot, or your organization has built an API talking directly to a model, you should be fine. Like you can use any kind of IP that you want. Everything is secure. Nothing is used to train a model. Now, for those of you that you have your own individual accounts, be careful. Uh, just because you have like a paid account, that doesn't mean your information is secure. Now, for those of you that are using ChatGPT, you can just turn on a temporary chat. You'll be fine there. Your chat information and documents will not be used to train the model. But again, please be careful. Don't use IP out there on a public model. As far as bias, this is still a major issue. I just saw an example only about 3 weeks ago where an HR professional went ahead and went into ChatGPT to try to get a job description and salary for a new role for a leader. And all they did was change the name of the person who was, going for this job from a male to female. And the male applicant actually, it was suggested that they get a salary. I think it was either $80,000 or $100,000 more than the female. Wow. So these are just some major issues that are still within these models in regards to bias. Why is bias in there? Well, when you take, every form of data known to humanity, there's the good and the bad. And the labs have attempted to remove, and modify their weights and biases in these models to remove the bias, but it's still in there. So again, be careful and make sure that you check your work all the way through.
Yeah, I've what you were saying about the labs like trying to remove the bias. Sometimes I've just from like an intuitive standpoint, when I think about everyone using these tools and asking questions and whatnot, in some ways it almost seems like it's impossible to remove bias 100%. Um,
Yeah.
but
And then every single model, so not just ChatGPT, but Gemini, Claude, Llama, Grok, they all have their own inherent bias. Grok definitely goes more to the right than to the left. And so even within these models, they are skewed a certain way. So it's just not like a baseline.
yeah, yeah, that's important to remember. Um, well, cool. Thanks, Josh, for providing everyone with some with some tips of how to, carefully use these tools. Um, I think that's important since it's so new. Um, so moving on, uh, we're going to now go over our data on how instructional designers are actually using AI for content creation. Um, so I know some of you guys already shared. So, if you've already shared, feel free to take a break from this question. But, we wanted to know how do you use AI tools, as an instructional designer? I know some of you guys were saying, you're using it for brainstorming and ideation. I saw some stuff about voiceovers and translation. And so, we asked our survey participants about all of those things that you guys mentioned. Um, so first, we asked about how frequently are you using AI for general day-to-day tasks, such as outlining, summarizing, data analysis, etc. And we asked about a lot of different tasks in our survey. So they're not all going to be included here in the presentation on the screen, but if you want to look at all that data, you can find it in the report. Um, so I just kind of included like the top and bottom for the next few slides. Um, so we found that instructional designers most commonly use AI tools for outlining and summarizing, with 60% of respondents saying that they often or always use AI for this. Instructional designers also commonly use AI tools for writing and then brainstorming and ideation. And a lot of you guys mentioned that in the chat earlier. So when I was talking to Josh earlier this summer, he pointed out to me that these kinds of tasks are quite low risk. So that's why we're seeing AI being used more often. If you use generative AI, for instance, to summarize some documents, and then you review that output, you can be relatively confident in using that output. When we move on to what instructional designers aren't using AI for much, we found that they're not using AI a ton for data analysis or project management. 23% often or always use AI for data analysis, and then 13% for project management. So I have two questions for Josh on this slide. So first, can you share with us some best practices when using AI for some of these tasks here, like ideation
Mhm.
and writing and brainstorming? And then second, can you enlighten us on your thoughts on AI for project management? Do you think that's effective? The usage is quite low. Why is that?
Can I do the project management one first?
Sure. Yeah.
So, I mean, I think everyone already has a project management tool, right? And to actually go ahead and attempt to, uh, input all this information in regards to your resource and the specific tasks they would be accomplishing, and then resource allocation. There are many, many tools that already have all that functionality in there, and I think it's just extremely difficult when you're a mid project or taking on so many other projects to change a tool mid course and even attempt to do any kind of experiments with project management in AI. Thus, I think we have some very low number. Now, can you go out and take your current resource pool or information from your project and take a snapshot and put it into AI and say, hey, can I reconfigure my resources based upon where we're at with this project? Sure. Use it as a thought partner. But I think for full on project management, people are just locked in the tools that they have. And you know what? That's fine if it gets the job done. Right. Now, as far as like the other tasks, again, what I'm seeing is it's a combination of learning professionals continuing to up their skills with prompt design and trying to figure out how they can lean into their expertise so that the outputs that they create are actionable. And that's the key. And I know for many of you, you may have struggled at first to try to get to the point where the outputs were actionable. They were 90, 95, or 100% complete, even with the review. And I think everyone is starting to up their game and increase their skills when it comes to prompt design. Thus, we're seeing these low risk tasks like outlining, writing, video scripts, multiple choice questions, the things that we do day in and day out. More learning professionals are getting their game on, able to go ahead and produce the outputs they need to be actionable. They're able to go ahead and quickly get it reviewed, and they're increasing the speed of their outputs. So, and I think we see more velocity in those areas as we see maturation of prompt design skills, people leaning into their expertise, and also being able to share big wins with peers. I think community is massive, and that will give you velocity as far as what you can do and what is capable within your learning ecosystem and AI.
So by that community, you mean just like um, collaborating, like with your colleagues, learning how they prompt, learning what they do, that sort of thing?
Yep. Keeping a prompt library, having a standing meeting every week, every 2 weeks to go ahead and share prompts, being able to go ahead and retire prompts that maybe don't work anymore or don't align with a current model. This is an active, communal type thing that needs to happen within organizations. It's a maturation that really is part of that behavior change that needs to happen with you when using AI.
Yeah, that sounds like a really nice idea. I haven't really thought about that, but yeah, almost sort of like a communities of practice. Um, cool. So moving on now to sort of more specific tasks related to instructional design. Um, we asked our survey participants about how frequently they use AI tools for these tasks when designing courses. And 57% said that they use AI tools often or always for outlining courses and storyboarding. And then 53% for writing learning objectives. So as you can see, these tasks involving outlining and writing align with the data we just saw in the previous slide. And then we found that instructional designers use AI less often for developing learning personas and analyzing learner or performance data. So, Josh, why do you think instructional designers aren't using AI much for developing learner personas or analyzing data? And do you have any recommendations for how people can start using AI for these things?
Well, I think it's a matter of like you don't know what you don't know. And as more information disseminates out about creating learning personas, or at least taking a segment of your population of audience members and then extending that out as to what all the personas are, that takes a little bit of time. And also it's very nuanced, right? As far as like when and where you'd go ahead and use personas within your whole entire learning journey creation. So you have to have those skills. Again, I think it's the kind of thing where over time you will see advantages of creating personas using AI, but it has yet to gain some traction. Now, in regards to like the learner performance data, again, there are very few learning professionals out there that are leveraging data currently within AI. I think it's a skill that is, again, playing catch up. And once there is access to specific models that can go in and actually take data, and you know for a fact, like in the background, it's using code to analyze the information, or with, within Copilot, like the analyst agent, you gain confidence in actually using those models to crunch that data down. I know that, like, for, like the workshops that I run, utilizing ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude to go in and gather data from a whole bunch of touch points within frontline business, right? To actually, you're putting your performance consulting hat on, and you have incident reports, you have interviews from frontline managers, you have interviews from frontline workers, you have customer service surveys, you have all these data points coming back, and you can use an AI model to go in and recognize patterns within that data that then can be verified by a human. But that takes, some chops to actually get in there and kick those, that information around and then have the confidence to make it actionable. And I think that does take some skills around AI. But once you have those and you actually put it within your workflow, it's extremely powerful. So I see the ability to go in and leverage the data that you have, and take advantage of AI to use it in such a way that you can begin incorporating it effectively within your whole entire learning journey.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You have to sort of have the ability to, I mean, you have to know like what data you want to collect, what data you need to collect. Does your organization even collect this data? Then,
Do they even want to share the data? That's another
right.
problem.
Well, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So there's a lot of steps to actually being able to use like AI effectively for data analysis. That makes a
Right.
lot of sense. Yeah. And then you have to have the skills too to be able to verify,
That's right.
whether what's coming out is accurate or not. And then making it actionable. There's a lot going into it.
Yeah, exactly. And again, you don't want to mess it up, because typically, especially on the front end of a job, when you're going in, you're analyzing all that data. If it's analyzed wrong, all your solutions are going to be wrong. So
Yeah.
there is a high risk when analyzing data on the performance consulting side of any kind of job.
Yeah, that really stood out to me when we were talking earlier this summer about sort of the what is high risk and what is low risk.
Right.
And that's something to think about when starting to use AI. And sort of like you said, that explains a lot of these numbers that we're seeing in our results. Um, well, great. Next, we'll move on to AI for creating content. So, we found that instructional designers are equally likely to use AI tools to develop training materials, assessments, learning activities, multimedia assets, and e-learning modules. So about 40% said that they often or always use AI to create each type of content. And then for those who said that they use AI to create multimedia assets, we asked how frequently they're using AI for this. And again, we asked about a lot of different assets. They're not all on the screen here, but you can check that out in the report. And what's interesting is the only asset that greater than 50% of respondents said that they often or always use AI to create is voiceovers for things like translation, images, videos, um, and a lot of other assets we asked about. We see a much smaller proportion frequently using AI. So, Josh, could you provide some context for these results? Why is it that instructional designers um, are most commonly using AI to do voiceovers and narration? And what are your thoughts on why they aren't using AI often for like these other types of assets? Do you think AI could be effective for
Yeah.
creating things like images and videos?
Yeah, I'll hit each one. So with voiceovers and narration, there was a point when 11 Labs, Well Said Labs, they reached a point where the audio is amazing. And for many practitioners, the pain it is to actually go ahead and do pickups after a job has been released and you have something out on the LMS and you got to do an update and you got to find the original voice talent. Well, you don't have to worry about that anymore, right? So not only that, but there's so many different nuances that you can put into the voice in regards to pronunciations and inflection. I believe we are at that point where you can effectively go in and utilize AI for voice across all of your projects. As a matter of fact, many of the other tool, like the vendors like Articulate and Adobe, they're using 11 Labs within their tools. So again, even if the vendors feel that confident about AI audio, it's at a point where I feel that everyone should be leveraging it within their projects. As far as translation, again, it comes down to risk. I mean, can you go and translate something in Chat GPT or Copilot? Of course you can. Is it correct? Well, that remains to be seen. You still have to have a subject matter expert go through that translation to validate it. So there's a little bit of a drag there, but I mean, you can go in and do massive amounts of translation at scale, but you have to make sure that it's all validated. Now, images is really interesting. And I think what's happening here is that so many of us already have resources in regards to images like stock or other repositories that have images. And people are still going in and trying to figure out, how do I prompt to create a great image that's usable, right? There's also concerns about copyright and leveraging or creating imagery that may have some legal risk to that. So yeah, I think it's a combination of just trying to get the skills to learn how to prompt for a proper image and have consistency. Many of us don't have access to Midjourney, which is a superior image creation model. So it could be also an access issue. Now with videos are complex. They require many, many steps. And I did a post today on LinkedIn about a video I created in 20 minutes. Now, I have 30 years of experience in this space, and much of that is creating video. So I'm leaning into my expertise. But even that, I mean, even with all my experience, I recognize these little nuances or these issues that would increase the cognitive load of a video with using an AI avatar. The audio is inconsistent, the B-roll is off. I mean, yeah, it's cool that these vendors are coming out and you can expedite the video creation process, but what is the value of that asset? And I don't think it's there. I think, we take a look at what's being created, we realize that it doesn't have any value, so we go back and do it manually, or we use a portion of that AI generated content into our manual process today. So video's got a long way to go. There's a lot more work to be done, but I would say that that number would continue to increase as all these outputs get better.
Yeah, thanks for thanks for explaining that. It's insightful for me to hear someone who's not an instructional designer. Hearing about your process is interesting. So that concludes the overview of the research findings. Again, this report is free, so if you're interested, you can download it from our website. Rocky will put the link again in the chat for you all. And we're gonna have a little bit of time for a Q&A. But before we do that, I just want to go over a few things with you all. So first, it's our action plan that we put together on this topic. In the report, you can find more resources on AI and instructional design, as well as tips from our subject matter experts. But I'll just give you a brief overview here. So first, if you haven't already started playing around with AI tools, but it sounds like a lot of you guys have, um, this is the time to get started if your organization allows it. So, with some of these free tools, there's not a huge barrier to entry. So you can get started on your own. And then if you want more directed support, we have a workshop at ATD specifically for instructional designers that will dive into real world use cases and give you opportunities to practice using AI. Um, so we'll put the link for you in the chat. If you're interested, you can check that out. And then, next, as we've sort of talked about throughout this webinar, we recommend being thoughtful in your use of AI and working to mitigate the associated risks. So look into your jurisdiction's copyright and intellectual property laws, follow your organization's governance policies, and then exercise professional judgment and critical thinking when reviewing the output of AI. And then lastly, always evaluate whether AI is the right tool to help you accomplish a task. Like Josh was just talking about, some tasks may be a better fit than others. And at the end of the day, you want AI to augment your processes. You don't want to make things more complicated for yourself. Um, and next, we'll be publishing a book written by Josh later this year titled Applying AI in Learning and Development from Platforms to Performance. So this book explores how to seamlessly incorporate AI into existing L&D processes, as well as how AI-enabled L&D platforms can facilitate personalized learning paths, automated performance, um, and automated performance support, and real-time skills gap analysis. You'll also learn how to craft effective prompts for learning design and use chatbots and AI assistants for help in the moment of need. So this book publishes in November, but you can pre-order it right now. So we'll put the link for you guys in the chat for that too. And congrats, Josh, on your book. We're excited to see that soon.
I wish I could have it come out today. Like
Yeah.
this publishing process is, you got to be patient. I can tell you that all the exercises and all, like, I'm going through and creating the support website right now. It's going to be spectacular because you're going to be able to go through, run through the exercises. I'm gonna have associated videos with all the chapters. We're going to blow it out. So it's something you'll be able to pick up and use either as a reference or for your whole entire team to actually go through chapter by chapter and build your skills along the way.
Very cool. Yeah, that sounds awesome. I'm sure November seems like a long time away.
Yes, it is.
Um, so in addition to Josh's book, we've also got a resource for you guys. We published a TD at Work guide earlier this year by Michelle Lentz on how to partner with AI for instructional design. So it breaks down some of the AI principles, which I think is helpful, and then it's got a lot of good suggestions on how to write prompts to enhance the design process, etc. So this is free to download for members, and then there's a small fee for non-members. Um, so we'll put that in the chat for you guys as well. And then lastly, just a few research announcements I want to share. Um, Again, the research report is free. And then, you know, next, I kind of wanted to talk about our research surveys. Um, this is how we get our data for our reports. We send out a lot of surveys, and you might come across them in your email inbox. So please, please take a look at those, because the more responses we get, the more research we can do, and then the more information we can share with you all. So please look in your inbox, and you can also, in your settings, your account settings, you can go in and change your email preferences to make sure that that you're getting our surveys. And then last, tune in to our next webinar. It's going to be on September 5th at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we'll be diving into research on manager development. So if you're interested in that, you can go ahead and register with the link we'll put in the chat. And then again, I want to thank our sponsor, Clarity Consultants, for sponsoring today's webinar. And so now we can get into the Q&A. Put your questions in the chat. Rocky will share those with us. And yeah.
All right, sorry about that. I was trying to get all the links into the chat.
Yeah.
Okay, so we did have a few questions that I had been keeping track of. So one of the questions that we had received was, do you encounter changes in customer expectations with regards to customization and the willingness to pay for instructional design? So I'm assuming that that means, like, by using AI, are you experiencing any changes in customer expectations, or how much they're willing to pay for somebody to do instructional design if they're using AI?
Fascinating. I mean, I know a lot of owners of learning development companies, right? I believe it's a concern, but I think for their existing companies, existing clients, like those clients know their worth, right? And I don't know if I'd want to work with a customer that immediately is saying, hey, go use AI to reduce your prices. I just, I don't know. I have a problem with that. Yeah, so, but again, have I heard like firsthand of that type of activity? I don't know, maybe once or twice this past year, but it's not coming to the forefront. It's something that I haven't seen bubble up completely. So I don't think we're there yet to where you're going to go ahead and get those types of questions like, hey, use more AI to reduce your prices.
Sure. No, that's good to hear that, you know, that it's not coming up yet. So hopefully it stays away.
I mean, there are definitely certain types of customers that want lower prices and they will get it any way possible. Like, you know, how come you're not using AI for this? And they don't understand the nuances. They don't understand the risk. And so if you do happen to get those questions, you have to do better with customer education so that they understand that it's not an automatic process and that there are checks and balances in place. Even if you are using AI, and to the point of some of these attendees, sometimes it takes longer depending upon what it is. So again, it's just customer education.
Absolutely. Then the next question is, some people, including me, have a reaction to the idea of being fooled by AI. Videos voices, photos. I use an AI content note, internal L&D products, but some colleagues think that makes it worse and think people have to learn to get over it. So what are your thoughts on, do we say that this is AI generated, or do we not say it is?
There is one word that keeps coming back, and it's integrity. If you lose your integrity, and it doesn't matter where, it could be online, it could be on LinkedIn, it could be with your customers, it could be with your associates that you're creating content for. You lose integrity, you lose trust, you lose their attention. Full stop, right? So I think it becomes evident when you should be able to, you have to go in and say, okay, I used AI to help create this. Be transparent, right? Now, for some of the work that I do, like on LinkedIn posts, I'm using AI for a first draft, but I'm changing a majority of it with my voice, right? I'm using it as an idea generator. So I don't feel compelled at the bottom of my post saying created in collaboration with ChatGPT, right? I don't feel compelled to do that. I think I'm maintaining my integrity because I'm using my voice throughout that whole entire post. But again, I think every situation is going to be unique. But again, the bottom line is maintain your integrity.
Absolutely. And, somebody else commented in the chat that their legal department requires them to disclose whenever they're using AI in our content development. So I think it's always good to just run things by legal, like by your legal department to see what they're saying, what they would recommend that you do at your organization. So I think that that's a great advice also. So we've got time for maybe one more question. So how do you propose, if somebody needs AI tools for instructional design, how do they get it into their budget, right? Like, what do they do to increase their chances of getting the budget to be able to purchase some of these AI tools? So any suggestions on what they can do to help get it into their budget?
You got to prove its value. I don't know, get a sandbox version. If it's a platform, get a 30-day trial, but partner with IT. You got to partner with IT because they got to vet these tools and how the AI is working in the background, right? In case, because sometimes there's a back door and you don't know exactly what kind of information, if it's corporate IP that you put into Articulate or whatever, what's happening with that, right? So you have to build a partnership with IT so you can get these tools vetted, get a 30-day trial in-house once it's vetted, and then go ahead and run a mini project and document your time savings. Once you document your time savings, you can go back to leadership and saying, hey, we got a 30% boost in productivity by leveraging these tools. Let me go ahead and multiply out all the salaries of everyone on my team times that 30%. It should be a no-brainer, really.
That's great advice. And then we have one last question I think is a good one to end on. How would you recommend that the people on the call today stay ahead of the curve with AI advancements? So what should they be reading other than your book?
Yes.
What should they be looking out for?
First and foremost, what is your personal learning plan for AI for the rest of 2025? Can you recite that to me right now? Are you doing something every day, every week? Do you have a personal project you're working on? If not, get after it, right? Like seriously, like you need to go in and say, what am I doing every day? Am I taking 5 or 10 minutes to give myself grace to experiment, to understand better? Am I watching YouTube videos on prompting? Am I going in and watching what happened this week in AI news so I get an idea of what's happening at the macro? I do have one recommendation. I'm going to put his last name in here. You have to look him up. His name's Matt Wolf. He does a weekly. Another guy is Matthew Berman, Berman, Matthew Berman. Two guys that you can watch up on YouTube. They're doing the hard work and putting the news out there either daily or weekly. Find your resources. Okay, so find your resources and put together a personal learning plan for AI for the rest of 2025 and beyond.
Great final words of advice. So I'm going to pass it back over to Tessa to close us out today.
Yeah, thanks, Josh, for all of those really insightful answers to our audience's questions. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Thanks, Josh, for joining, Rocky, for your help with monitoring the chat. And that concludes our webinar. So we'll see you guys in the next one on September 5th. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.